Quran chapter 37, verses 6 through 8. Indeed, we have adorned the lowest heaven with the stars for decoration and for protection from every rebellious devil. They cannot listen to the highest assembly of angels, for they are pelted from every side. So the Quran is basically saying that stars are little lamps meant to make the sky look pretty, and that meteors are stars that God shoots at the devils to keep them away from angels, so that the devils can't hear the secrets of the angels. Well, to me, it seems that Allah doesn't have a basic understanding of his own creation. But if you think I'm wrong, well, then call us and let me know, because the show is starting right now. Well, hello, everybody. We are live. Today is August 20th, 2023. I am your host, Armin Navabi, and joining me today is Dave Warnock. Hi, Dave. How are you?
Hey, Armin. Good to see you, man. Glad to be here.
Oh, that's great. I'm so glad that I'm hosting this with you. What do you think of the Quran verse that I just read you? Do you think that's the word of a perfect God?
It makes sense to me, shooting stars at devils. And
Right.
yeah, I'm going to go with it. I'm going to convert to Islam after the show because I like that. Now, actually, it's not dissimilar to some verses in the Bible. And looking at that, the Quran and the Bible, you can clearly tell that these books are written by men who don't understand the universe. They don't understand the world they're living in. So they're writing from their own limited experience and limited knowledge. If it was a God involved in it who had actually created the world as we're told he did, then you would think he would have better understanding of his own creation, as you said. But he didn't, because he didn't write it. Men did. Let's just all admit that and be done with this nonsense. What do you say?
I agree. I think I agree. It sounds very childlike, doesn't it? It's like a child seeing a shooting star. Like, what is that? What do you think that is, little Timmy? Like, oh, I think God is going pew 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 at the devils. That's what a child would answer. I was like, I don't know.
Same thing with lightning and thunder and things like that. That we don't understand what that is. So let's make it out to be a god and create a story around that god. I mean, come on, let's just grow up here.
Yeah, I agree. Well, guys, I have to tell you that the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. So before we get to the calls, I'm going to read the question of the week. So we wanted to give you last week's results of the Share Your Experience question of the week. And last week's we asked you, what is the weirdest Bible story? And here are the top 3 answers. So number 3 from Josh Sheridan. Weirdest story, the Israelites having to mark their abodes with blood so God would know they weren't Egyptian. I if I put my Christian hat on, I could explain this. I could be, well, the blood was not to help God. It was to help the angel of death with God's genocide. So yeah, I have an explanation for this one. Well, number 2 from C Nault. C Nault says, strongest Bible story, Lot, the most righteous man in Sodom, offered his virgin daughters up to be assaulted so his guests wouldn't be disturbed. I don't know what's wrong with that. He was just being hospitable. I don't see it here.
Don't see a problem with that. After all, they're just property, these virgin daughters, in the biblical narrative.
Yeah, I just think Sinal doesn't know how to take care of his guests, or her. Number 1, Jared Keys, with the answer, I've always found the Samson and Delilah story to be the weirdest. A total superhero story, so obviously a myth, and yet people believe it to have literally happened. Yeah, it's a myth, and it's also not a very good one. Like, This is the one where he gets his superpowers from his hair, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's bad writing. That's really bad writing. Like that wouldn't sell today as a good superhero story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some romance novel with these guys on the cover who have the long hair. No?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like
Fabio. Who's
if
the guy that posed for all those? Fabio, I think. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the reference. But like if you look at today's superhero story, like some of them get it from a hammer, some of them get it from some radioactive event or something. It's just so more cool. From your hair, that's just weird. That's like boring.
Mm.
Well, we have a new question for this week, and my co-host Dave gets to be the first person to answer the prompt for this week. So here's the question. Make a church sign with a double entendre. So Dave, how would you respond to that?
Oh, that's easy. Are you prepared on the drive down the road? You can see this on the little First Baptist Church in the little small town. Are you prepared for the Lord Jesus to come quickly?
Yeah, I would think that would leave a lot of Jesus's followers very unsatisfied. I think. Well, that's a good answer. That's a good guys. Can you beat that? Please leave your answers as a comment in the comment sections. Give us your best answers and tune in next week when we will reveal the top 3. I can't wait to see what the top 3 are next week. All right, so guys, also please leave in the comment section that I'm doing a good job as a host, because they have told me that if they don't see at least 20 comments that tell the ACA that I'm doing a good job as a host, they will not have me back. Okay, so I need at least 20 comments in the comment section saying Armin did amazing. Please do that.
Folks. Show your love. Show your love.
Right. Well, let's look at the calls. I have 3 calls. Okay, I have a good one. Let's check this one. Okay. Let me see. Yes. This one looks good. So we have a call from Tim from China. Wow. Tim believes in reincarnation. Do we have Tim on the line? Tim, can you hear us?
Oh, hello. Making a phone call. Hello. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah. Yes. I can hear you.
Tim.
Okay, guys. Yeah. Thank you for taking me. Yeah. So I called about a month ago. I'm sorry. I need to move a little bit. Yeah. So I called about a month ago to make kind of an argument in favor of reincarnation from kind of a probabilistic point of view. And just to summarize, kind of what I said was that if you wait long enough, if you wait a very, very long time, every possible thing will happen every possible way. Like, in other words, if I have like a dice, say like, I play D&D, like a D10, if I roll that 11 times, just mathematically, it has to repeat at least once, right? So if you look at the human brain and you say the human brain generates consciousness, or the human brain channels consciousness, whatever it may be, it's still just a particular set of particles in a particular position. And so even though it's a very large number of particles, it's a finite number of particles. So if you wait long enough, and it's a very, very, very long time, but you could calculate what this is, eventually the exact conditions of your brain will repeat. And, for any particular conditions, like we could get it so exact as like the entire history of the observable universe. And it's supposed to be something, they call it the Poincare recurrence time. And I've heard it's something like 10 to the 10 to the 10 to the E. And at that point, it doesn't matter if it's seconds or years that we're talking, it's just such a huge number. But the idea is like, you're only conscious under these certain conditions. So from your perspective, kind of just by definition, the anthropic principle, you are always conscious from your own perspective. So you only observe the particular states of the universe in which you exist. So that was arguing for a very specific type of reincarnation. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I don't think that's, everything happens unless you're limited by the laws of, if there's certain constraints that is holding you for every possible thing to happen. Like if I have a coin, and if you toss it, you're going to get heads and tail, right? But if you just leave it on the table and there's like a limitation of its movements, no matter how long you wait, you're not going to get every possible outcome. You're only going to get one outcome, right? So if
Sure.
if our consciousness is going through the universe and there's some limitations on what could happen, then no, you're not going to get every possible outcome. You're going to get very limited outcomes.
Okay. Sure, and that's fair. So the Jain view of this, I'm a Jain. I practice Jainism, which is actually an atheistic religion in that we have the view that the universe always exists, or the universe system, so to speak, and it's constantly changing. So, looking at the comments from like last time I called, the major criticism I seem to get was like the idea of heat death, right? That if you wait long enough, eventually, entropy just gets so high and everything is so spread out that there aren't novel events, right? And so that would be kind of a constraint in the future. So kind of my response to that is really kind of twofold. Going with like the very standard cosmology of, Big Bang to heat death, that is certainly true. But there are still kind of random quantum fluctuations. And even though the probability may be very, very, very small, eventually you're going to get a repeat of the initial conditions of the Big Bang, or another Big Bang with different conditions, but still kind of the beginning singularity of some new universe. And at least some of those will have the conditions for life because ours does. So it seems it is possible to have that in principle. But actually the model I find to be much more similar to the Jain model. Well,
let me here. Like
Penrose's. Oh yeah.
Hello, can you hear me, Tim?
Oh,
so
yeah,
yeah, okay, because like you are coming up with some pre-assumptions about how everything works and saying like if this is the model that we have, then this will get right. But what we know, based on what we know about our universe, it doesn't seem like that's what we're working with, right? And then if the model, if the theories that we have of our universe, if that's if those are the best explanations that we have, and it seems like based on the rules that govern our universe, we're not going to have every single scenario play out. We're only going to have actually one scenario play out, and everything else is limited, because the only way that you're going to infinite amount of time, even if we had infinite amount of time, the only way that you're going to get every possible results, if it was every possible results were allowed to play itself out. But if it's limited, then no matter how much time you give it, only one outcome will be able to play itself out, right? So, and also you talk about quantum fluctuations and stuff like, yeah. So I don't know, within, like, once you go within the quantum world and it goes subatomic particles, I think a lot of people go there because there's some sort of randomness there that seems like now there's a lot of possibilities that will open the universe. But even if you go there, like the randomness that you notice there might only be because of our lack of understanding of how things come to be. Like even there, like randomness is just a human-centric perspective from things that we don't know exactly how the outcomes are. Do you know what I mean? Like even within the quantum realm, even when you get atomic particles, everything could be completely deterministic. And you say that every possible outcome could be playing itself, but no, based on what we understand of how physics works, there's only one outcome that is possible. There's not all these alternative outcomes are not possible because they're completely restricted. They are limited. Do you understand?
Oh, sorry, I lost you for a second. Okay, sorry.
Do you understand?
Can you hear me?
Say, yeah. Do you understand? So,
yeah.
Because the
can I respond or?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay. So that's fair. I mean, I'm not a physicist myself. I'm not claiming to speak with any particular expertise. I try to understand the models as well as like a layperson can, but that's fair. My understanding of it is like there is the idea of like kind of 0-point energy or kind of vacuum energy, where we have like these virtual particles constantly coming in and out of existence, and that's sort of the cause of like what we perceive as randomness. But you're right, there's a lot that we don't know. But
hey Tim, let me jump in. Hey Tim,
yeah,
hold on a minute.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
let me jump in because I'm having a hard time with all this. Really quickly, define reincarnation for me. What's your understanding of what that is and what it means?
Sure. So to do that, I would need to introduce just a few terms. So Are you familiar with like Jiva and Ajiva, like the meaning of those?
No, just hey, tell it to me like I'm
Okay.
6.
Sure.
Like I'm 6 years old.
Okay, sure.
Tell me why, what reincarnation is and why you believe it. Just
Okay,
real simple.
so
Don't get into big
basically-
fancy terms and backgrounds. Just really quickly.
That's fair. Okay. Okay. So from your own point of view, you always exist. So think about like what is death, right? You know, death is, we could describe it as like you go to sleep and you never wake up, in a sense, right?
Exactly.
But the converse of that is think about like, I don't know exactly where in the development this happens, but like waking up and never going to sleep, right? Like being like a very, very young child or a baby or like whenever it is you have your first conscious experience, right? And so from everyone's point of view, I am I, right? And you would say you are I, right? And actually, so the thing with it is like Jainism, it's not like the Abrahamic religions where like there is a dogma and you need to believe it.
Can you answer the question though? You're saying things that has nothing to do with Dave's question.
Yeah, let me just cut to the chase here, Tim. Hang on, Tim. Hang on.
Okay.
So as I understand reincarnation, it's that when I die, at some point I'm going to come back as myself in another form. Is that accurate? Like as a dog or as an eagle? Is that accurate or am I off?
Kind of a body. Yeah, you're going to have some kind of a physical body connected to a mind, yeah.
So I could be Dave, and with my personality and my sense of humor and my intellect, however limited that is, but I'm going to be in the body of an eagle?
Well, the idea is like when, okay.
How would I express my sense of humor and my personality if I'm Dave, but I'm in the body of an eagle?
Okay, yeah, sure. So, I mean, the ego is not what reincarnates, right? The ego dies with the body.
No, the eagle, an eagle, a flying bird. A flying bird. How would I?
Ego, like, yeah. So your identity as Dave, that dies with the body. Like you don't, that does not pass on. What passes on is a much subtler sense of self, like we would call the Brahman in Sanskrit. So yeah, you're right. Your identity, there really is no mechanism for specific memories or something like that to pass on, at least under normal circumstances, let's say. But
how does this sounds like a science fiction movie, and I want to know.
Okay, I mean,
how does that affect the life I'm living now? If I'm living this life, the only life I know that we have, and I'm living with my joys and my sorrows and my pain and my happiness and my relationships and all the things that make life wonderful. I'm living this life, and if I believe that when I die, I'm going to come back as an orangutan or as a hippopotamus at some point in the future. How does that affect the way that I live this life, or the way that you would live your life if you believe that?
Okay. So I mean, it kind of gets into the idea of karma. So karma is not some magical force. It's not like it's not like a fifth law of physics or anything like that. It's just the principle of causality. Everything in the world has cause and effect. Everything. If we think like socially, you're 6 degrees of separation from everyone else. You can't make an observation without changing something. We're constantly interacting with the world. And so whether we're talking like a single life or many lives, we are in this dynamic system where our actions have consequences. And so if you want to have good results, you need to cultivate good habits. And that could be within a life or between lives. It's really the same principle.
So that means that if I'm kinder to people in this life or kinder to animals in this life, that when I'm reincarnated as some other form, that I'll be treated better in that life. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, so there's several aspects to this. If you want to get like really technical, like Brahman.
Not really. I don't. I just wonder.
And you don't have.
I'm going to ask one more thing, and then I'll let Armin jump back in because I don't want to dominate. But do you have any evidence for any of this? Or is this just speculation based on probabilities in your mind? Because we kind of like to deal with evidence here.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine. So it's experiential. It's and I don't expect anyone to believe based on my experience.
You've experienced it?
I would say that's a very foolish thing to do. You should. What I would suggest to anyone who's interested is just think about the question: who are you? Like,
okay, so no.
Like, who are you?
No. So the answer is no. You don't have any evidence. But also notice how what you started with. No, yeah. Wait, one second. Notice how.
And I'm not.
One second. Notice how what you started with talking to us about has nothing to do with the reincarnation and karma. Like you are trying to, you have a conclusion in your mind, and then you are starting with some limited understanding that you have about quantum physics and some, things that you have read about science, and you're trying to introduce a mystery and some magical thinking way of looking at things that maybe we don't understand, and things that maybe the scientific method can't completely explain, and then you fill this gap with all this nonsense that you already have believed in. I mean, there's no way that you could connect these together, right?
Yeah.
So you're just doing the standard. You're just doing the standard, basically exactly like the God believers, right? So God believers say mystery, therefore God, and you're basically doing mystery, therefore reincarnation. There's no way that you make this connection.
You're starting with the conclusion and then building your case to back up your conclusion. That's what it sounds like to us, because I guess you're saying that you believe you've been here before in some other form, and you don't have any evidence for that, but you just believe that that's what life is, correct?
Sure. I mean, so the reason I believe this, like, it's a personal experience, but like when I was very deep in a meditative state and I was actually trying to do something completely different, I feel like I had an experience of ego death. Are you familiar with the concept?
Yes.
And it felt like I was in contact with like kind of the self of all selves, so to speak, like they call Brahman in India. And I had sort of a Platonic dialogue with like this deeper root consciousness.
Tim, do you believe in God?
Anyone to believe me based on my experience, but no, I mean, Jainism is an atheistic religion. Yeah.
Okay. So I know that. That's why I'm asking you that. So you don't believe in God. A lot of people use your method. Yeah, I understand that. A lot of people use your methodology of personal experience to believe in God. Why is their methodology not valid?
But I don't expect you to believe in reincarnation because of my experience. So that's why I'm not using that as.
I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about you. I'm trying to understand why you believe it. I'm trying to understand why you think personal experience is a good methodology to come up with any conclusion.
Well, because we're talking about consciousness, we're talking about physical matter, right? And so, like, if we're dealing with questions of consciousness and how it functions, right? Like, it seems that the methodology to do that would be, inducing altered states of consciousness. So,
it's because
full disclosure. Okay.
Talking about consciousness and not really knowing what that means and what's before or after our conscious state doesn't give us license to just create stories and to make something up. That's what religion has done. You've just replaced.
I agree. I agree.
Hey, Tim.
Okay,
Hey, Tim.
Yeah.
We let you talk, and so when we're talking, maybe you should listen. How's that? Okay.
Go ahead. Okay.
You're doing what religion does. There's a gap there in your understanding, and so you're creating a narrative to fill that gap. That's what religion does. What I find most effective is to just simply say, you know what? I don't know what's beyond the grave. I don't know what's after this life. What I know is we have this life. I don't know what was before because I wasn't aware of anything before I was born. I got here. I'm here now. And I'm going to live the life that I think is best. And I don't need to believe in karma. I don't need to believe in reaping what you sow, to use the Bible's narrative of karma. I just think that it's best if we treat people with kindness, if we treat people like we would like to be treated, if we're generous, if we're compassionate. That's just good behavior, and it helps society function better. I don't need to do it so that I get some reward in some future life. That's once again a transactional way to live, which I don't think is the best way to live. I think it's best to just be kind because that's what's best. So I'd prefer to live based on what I can see and feel and know and the evidence around me. I don't need to make up a narrative to explain what I simply don't know. And that's what I think you've done. That's all.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I respond? Is that okay?
Sure.
Can I tell you
so,
something
Yeah, I
before you respond?
definitely.
Okay, you go ahead. You go ahead and respond first. Then I'll want to tell you something after. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes. So, like, just to clarify, I was not raised Jain. I was actually raised Christian and became.
Sorry. You there?
You with us, Tim? Are you
I
there?
had some breathing solution.
Oh,
Yeah.
We lost you.
We lost you for a minute.
Sorry. Yeah, little bad connection. But yeah, it's not like I was setting out to have, like, it was a complete accident that I had this particular ego death experience that, led me down this path. But I think other people have had this experience too. It's not just me. And I think in principle, anyone can, if they kind of put in the effort to kind of meditate on this question of who you are. And I would invite, anyone who's curious, don't take my word for it.
The
That's
problem
foolish.
with your experience, to
sure.
Armin's point earlier, is that when you use an experience to create evidence, there's all kinds of experiences out there. I watched a documentary recently on Charles Manson. He had some mystical experiences and heard voices and did horrendous things in response to those voices. So any of us can have mystical experiences on or off drugs. And if we come out of that experience and base some belief system on that experience, I think we can get ourselves in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And also, a lot of people have had what you call an ego death experience, and many of them have been like, okay, I saw God. Some people say I saw the energy of the universe, and some people, even though they had that experience, remain completely materialistic and atheist and think like they had a completely natural explanation for why they had experienced that. So, given the randomness and also the variety in the conclusions people make out of having such an experience, I don't know why you think your ego death experience leads to any specific conclusion. And also, I want to point out that you're saying that because our consciousness leads to our understanding, therefore our experiences, our personal experience, is the best way to understand what how our consciousness. But that's not a good way of looking at it. It's true that any form of understanding that we have comes from our consciousness, but that doesn't mean that every form of understanding that people have is a good way to explain consciousness. There is understanding, there's flawed understanding, and there is scientific understanding with models and methodology that we have shown to prove to give us the best results. So both bad understanding and good understanding comes from consciousness. So you can't just say just because something comes from consciousness, therefore it could be used as a tool to understand consciousness. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Okay. Yeah, I see. That's what you're saying. Like, there's, delusions, hallucinations, not all experience of the world reflects the world as it is. I think that's totally fair. I was saying with this. Yeah.
All right. Make your because we need to move on to other. Make your last point.
Okay. Yeah, I would just invite anyone in the audience to consider, like you said, actually, like, avoid causing harm to other beings. That's the main virtue in Jainism, actually. We call it ahimsa. And just think about this question: who am I? Just, I invite you to do it. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But that's my point. Thank you guys for having me.
Appreciate that. But to respond to that again, I don't need a religion to help me be kind to other people and to treat people with kindness. I don't need to be.
I don't think you do either.
Jainism or Christianity or Buddhism or anything. Just
you can
just be a good person.
Yeah, you can develop your.
Okay.
It's your behavior that matters.
Yep, we agree on that.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Tim. Also, guys, just my suggestion is for you to realize that personal experience is one of the least reliable methods of trying to explain anything.
anything.
Right? Yeah, right. All right. So should I go? I have some good calls coming up, but I know that I have to. Okay, so let me check. Should I? I'm gonna do some super chats before I read something from. Okay, so we have some super chats from Greg. I'm gonna butcher, guys. I'm gonna butcher these names, so please forgive me. I tell ahead of time. Greg Markowski, but super chat saying Armin is doing a fantastic. Oh, I love these super chats. Thank you. Great. Greg is saying Armin is doing a fantastic job. Caused me to double my gift. David is his usual jovial self. Thanks for the show on his hot summer afternoon. Also, guys, I am going to mispronounce a whole bunch of things, but
Greg
I am.
Markowski, he's a good friend.
Yes. But I have a good excuse. English is my second language, so you're not allowed to make fun of me when I read things wrong. Okay. All right. So we have another super chat from Robin Webster saying,
Hey, Robin.
"Hey, Dave, check for a message from me later. I felt your pain on the Woo call. Armin doing a great job." Oh, guys, thank you.
Showing the love to our man Armin.
Yeah, guys. Okay, bring in the super chats. I'm gonna read them. I'm gonna read them with more enthusiasm from now. Okay. Okay. So, all right. Let's go to another call. Ooh, guys. If I see, I am biased here. Okay, so because I'm an ex-Muslim, if I see Islam-related calls, I'm going to pick those more. Also, if you are a Muslim, this is a very good chance for you to come humiliate an ex-Muslim live on air. That would be amazing if you could come and show how ex-Muslims don't understand anything they're talking about. So come and do that. Come and embarrass me in front of everybody. So Muslims, if you're watching, please call. All right. So we have Mary from Florida saying she has a question. What is the question? Curious about the story of Isaac and Ishmael and how it led to Islam. Hi, Mary. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. How are you doing,
Hey,
Dave and Armin?
Hey, Mary.
Hi.
I'm curious. I've been studying some ancient Near East religions and Middle Eastern religions and Abrahamic, and I'm curious as to Abraham's sons, Isaac and Ishmael. I understand. From what I know, they have two different mothers, and I'm curious, is Ishmael considered Muhammad's great grandfather in some sense, and how did Islam get that? Is that where they got sold? Well, kind of took that story and created Islam from the Bible story. Does that make sense?
Right. So do you want to hear the Islamic narrative or the secular narrative of what happened here? Which one do you prefer to hear?
I'm an atheist, so I think the secular, but maybe a little bit of the fable part as well.
Okay. So you know how in the Bible the story was that Abraham had a wife, Sarah, and he also had a sex slave called Hagar, right? That's what your version, right? I mean, I'm an ex-Muslim, so I have the Islamic version.
Well, the Bible didn't use the phrase sex slave, but nonetheless, that's what because Sarah was barren. And so, God provided him someone he could get pregnant, apparently. But go ahead. Sorry.
But Sarah did have Isaac.
Right.
And Hagar had Ishmael, or Ismail in Arabic. Okay. Right?
So, Sarah had Isaac when she was 99 years old. So yeah. Right. That all makes sense.
So the Christian and Jewish narrative is that God told Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, right? And Isaac is the father of all the Jews. right? The Islamic narrative is that God told Abraham to sacrifice Ishmael, and Ishmael is the father of all Arabs, not just Muhammad. So Arabs come from Ishmael, and Jews come from Isaac. And the reason why each one of them tries to say that it was our father that was supposed to be sacrificed, because that would be the more special son. So the story was in the Bible. The story was left off where Abraham just Sarah was jealous of Hagar, so Abraham just kicked out Hagar and Ishmael out of the house. But the Quran picks up that story where the Bible left and brings Hagar and her son Ishmael all the way to Arabia, where Ishmael eventually they start a city called Mecca there, and Abraham at some point for some reason comes all the way down there, and Ishmael and Abraham, his father, built the Kaaba. So according to Islam, the Kaaba was built by Ishmael and Abraham together in Mecca. So the utility of the story is very.
Is that the cube? I'm sorry. Is that the cube with the black stone?
Yes, the cube with the black stone that the Muslims go around. So that cube was apparently rebuilt by Abraham and Ishmael in Mecca, which makes no sense because Mecca is very far away from where Abraham was supposed to be. You don't just randomly visit Mecca to see your son and do a house project with him and then go back, right? That doesn't.
Well, how old was he?
What? Abraham? Very old.
Yeah.
Very. Okay. Yeah. Numbers don't make sense. Like these prophets lived hundreds of years according to Islamic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But here's the genius of this. So when the story sounds ridiculous, right? But the genius of the story is that Arabs, before they were Muslim, this is not an Islamic perspective anymore. This is academia. They had this perspective. So what the academics tell us, secular academics tell us, is that Arabs, when they started their religion with it was a Jewish sect. It was a Jewish Christian sect that eventually turned into Islam. And they had an Abrahamic religion, and because they wanted for their ethnicity, for their race to be special within the Abrahamic religion, they made up the story so they could also be the sons of Abraham. And Arabs in that area, they had Abrahamic religion and they had pagan Arab specific religions. The pagan Arab religions was focusing on the Kaaba, on the cube, and the Abrahamic religions wasn't. So this was meant to connect the Abrahamic part of the religions of Arabs to the pagan one. So they were claiming that we are the sons of Abraham by connecting the Arab ethnicity to Ishmael, so that they could be seen, just like the Jews are children of Abraham, we're also the children of Abraham. But because the Arabs were so connected to their own pagan traditions, in a way to connect these together and make the Kaaba and also a whole bunch of Arab rituals, bring it into the fold of Abrahamism, they made Abraham and Ishmael in the stories to build the Kaaba. So these stories have a political utility. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the interesting thing about this is that these fables, we atheists, we look at them and we think like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. How could anybody believe in this? And we're right. However, from a political perspective, if you step out and see the intention behind each one of these stories, you see that there was something to it. There's a political goal that each one of these stories have, and they meant to serve a purpose. Not a purpose not that these stories are true, but at some point these memes survived because of certain stories. Just like within evolution, like genes, every gene gives us like characteristics that at some point help us survive. Each one of these stories within these memes, within these myths, gave the entire ideology and the practice of it a characteristic that made it survive longer. So it was like evolution of memes rather than the genes. Do you understand how that works?
Yes.
That's fascinating, isn't it? Like if you think about every story within the Bible or the Quran or the Hadith as something that served a purpose that made that ideology last longer, that's what studying religion from that perspective makes Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism a lot more interesting than from a perspective of all this, from the other perspective that these are true stories.
Yes, right, and
So
that's
it's all for
that's how
power.
I study them. Yeah, a lot of politics in the Jesus story as well, you know.
Yeah.
But oh, I thought of a question and I lost it. Let me think now. Well, why do the Jews and Muslims hate each other so much, apparently? Is it because of the land, like the Jerusalem and Palestinian battle that will never end?
Right. So first, we have to make sure that we don't speak in general terms, because not all Muslims hate Jews and not all Jewish people hate Muslims, right? But
Okay. Yes.
there is something there, but it's not all of them, right? But also the answer really depends on the specific Muslim. If there is hatred there, usually we don't have one single answer. We have political answers, we have religious answers, and we also have personal experience answers. Somebody might have had a horrible experience that they just generalize it to all the Jews or all the Muslims, right? So, but if you're asking from a religious perspective, again, we have an Islamic answer, and we also have a secular answer. But Islamically, the understanding is that God first chose specific children of Abraham to make them the special people, to chose them as a way to show that God's favor, for them to show if they are worthy of being the special people, and they screwed it up, and they weren't following God's commandments. So God was supposed to pick children of Abraham as the special people, his special people. But then, given that the Jews screwed it up and didn't follow God's commandment, then God went to the other children of Abraham, which were the Arabs, and they are apparently not screwing it up according to this narrative. But so everything, there's so many others. Yeah. So, all the stories built up on that, and basically to show Islam started being very friendly. Like ideologically, Islam started being very Jewish friendly early on, because it itself was a Jewish sect that eventually evolved to Islam, right? But as it grew and evolved as a way to differentiate itself from the other Jewish sects and Christian sects, it became more hostile towards the ideology, because it was trying to define itself as something separate and unique.
And when you look at Judaism or the Muslim faith or Christianity, any faith that positions itself as the only correct faith, the only right way to look at the world and religion, any faith that says we are right and everybody else is wrong is going to be in competition with every other faith that says that. And so that's where you get a lot of this beyond the political thing. Everyone wants their version of the truth to be the right one. And I was talking to an ex-Christian ex-pastor today. He was telling me how his 16-year-old daughter was asking him recently, "Dad, I'm confused. How can there be so many different religions that all claim to be the right one, and yet they compete with each other in their ideology?" And she came to the conclusion, she said, it makes sense that they can't all be right, but they can all be wrong. And that's kind of the way that I look at that too. But setting aside the political struggle and the power struggle that these religions have for one another, I think, which is, to your point earlier, a big part of what's going on here. The other part of this is they're in competition with each other, and so there's going to be that animosity toward the other built into it.
Yes, and I think, as Christopher Hitchens said, it's like there can never be peace in the Middle East between Jews, Christians, and Muslims, because each one thinks they have their God on their side.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just a perpetual, never-ending. You can't come up with a resolution if that's what you're determining the
Yeah,
trouble.
and that line of reasoning has caused, that's not a benign idea. That's not a harmless thought process, because that has led to wars and killing and violence based upon the concept that God, I'm fighting for God. God is on our side and wants us to vanquish the enemies. That was what was behind the Crusades. So these are not harmless ideas. When we get in, when our thinking is that I'm speaking for God and God is on my side and He's calling me to convert everyone else to this line of thinking and to this belief system, and by all means and by any means we are to vanquish the enemy. That's not a benign thought. That's a dangerous thought process. That's what's behind
Right.
Christian
And
nationalism in this country. Christian nationalism is the thought process that God wants everyone in America, because America is a Christian nation. God wants everyone to be a Christian, and those that don't share that thought process need to leave, or in some of their minds be killed. That's dangerous thinking.
yeah, I don't want to live in a theocracy.
No.
But it seems like now, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't there? And then I'll let you go. I'm sure you have other callers. Wasn't there a? Was there a in Israel? Was there a Jewish mound or temple, and then Muslims came and built a mosque on top of it, and then there's the Wailing Wall around it, so it's just like a slowly burning flame that is just one day gonna ignite.
There's no flame.
Does that make sense?
So there's the temple of David that Muslims, well, at the time they were not Muslim, Arabs, they built something that was supposed to be more like a church, but eventually turned into a Islamic structure, and then they added mosques on top of it. So basically the Muslims built something on top of the ruins of David's temple, right? And many Jewish people think that for the Messiah to come, they need to rebuild the temple. So they kind of need to destroy what's on top of the Islamic structures. And unfortunately, a lot of Christians, a lot of Christian nationalists in the United States who have a lot of political power and vote a lot, also believe that for Jesus to come back, the entire Islamic structure needs to be destroyed so that the temple could be rebuilt. And because the United States is a superpower, and there are a lot of people in the United States that think like that and vote like that, unfortunately, they vote in a way for more conflict in the Middle East, because their understanding is the only way that all that Islamic structure is going to be destroyed is with a conflict. So we have a huge voter base in the United States that is voting in the direction of more conflict, more war. Like they're actually if they see war in the Middle East, they're like, yay, right? So this is one example of how religion is basically poisons people's mind. They are actually voting in the direction of more war. They're like, they see war and they get happy. Like there's not that many things that could make people think like that, to see destruction, and not because of the destruction is destroying something that they don't like, just because they want the destruction, because that's how they get Jesus back. That is like insane, and that's what how it works with religion.
Okay.
Anyways, Mary, we need thank you, Mary. Do you have any other last points before we go to the next call?
No, you really answered a lot of the questions I've had, and I wish that the United States would not be so supportive of Israel, and that's due to the Christian nationalism push. But thank you very much. I've always wanted to talk to an ex-Muslim for that clarification on Isaac and Ishmael. Thank you.
Thanks,
You
Mary.
too. Good evening.
All right.
you, Mary. Thank you, Mary. I just want to mention that I don't think that is supporting Israel. Like, I am in favor of supporting Israel. I think that's actually unhelpful to Israel. I think a lot of Christian support for Israel is harmful to Israel itself, right? So the religious influence that the United States has on Israel has been damaging to the politics of Israel. But supporting Israel would be supporting peace there, not supporting more war there. Yeah. So we have some super chats by El Tochi saying, I don't understand the super chat. I don't know what it's referring. Okay, so I'm just going to read it. It says, video game controller dances goofily. I didn't know that's a word. Under the word woot. Okay, those were words. But thank you. Yeah, thank you for the support. Thank you. And Twinkle Toes saying Shiba dog squeezing a big red heart. Again, I don't understand any of this. Am I dumb?
Stickers. So there must be a sticker that goes with that. I don't know.
Oh, okay. That's it. You guys described the super sticker. That's helpful. Thank you. Okay. Now I understand what's happening here. Thank you. Thank you, Dave, for explaining that to me. All right. So I'm gonna read. So I need to tell you this, guys. So we've been telling you about our upcoming annual bat cruise for this Saturday, August 26, 2023. And we'd like to announce that tickets have sold out. Oh no. But wait, there's hope. There's still a chance you may be able to join us. We have a ticket wait list that you can sign up for in case there are cancellations. To join the wait list, visit tiny.cc/batcruise. For those of you with tickets, you'll be joining the atheist community of Austin for a fun summer evening on the water, conversing with like-minded free thinkers like Forrest Walke. Did I read that right?
Forrest Walke.
Walke, yes, I knew that. Yeah. J. Mike, Christy Powell, and other hosts and crew of our various shows.
It's a lot of fun. I did it a couple years ago.
You did? I feel bad. I'm not gonna be there. Okay, but I'm gonna see. Maybe next year. Okay. Let's see what we have. Okay, so we have Joshua. Yes. Okay. Let me see. What is Joshua saying? Joshua from the USA saying, I'd like to present the fine-tuning argument. Oh, amazing. Atheist with special care taken to justify its modal claims and usage interpretation of probability. Sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo, but we'll see.
Hey, Joshua.
Hey, how's it going, Dave and Armin? How are y'all today?
Good, man. What you got for us?
Yeah, so I am here to present the fine-tuning argument. I think it's probably one of the best arguments for the existence of God. And I think there is one particular criticism that's very commonly brought up with regard to its interpretation or usage of probability, as well as its modal claims. So I'm going to present the argument as best I see it right now. So premise one, there exists some independent reason to give theism a non-zero credence, say 1%. And maybe this might be because you think the kalam, the ontological argument, maybe the argument from the mind, whatever it is, you think that God exists with a non-zero credence. Maybe it's 0.1%. So you're not a theist by any means. You think God might exist to some degree. You give it a number. Premise two, our life-permitting universe is very unlikely, and unlikely, of course, bears a heavy burden. I'm going to dig into that if naturalism is true. So more formally, in probabilistic terms, I can say the probability of our life-permitting universe given naturalism is much, much less than 1. And then premise three, our life-permitting universe is not unlikely if theism is true. So more formally, I can say that the probability of our life-permitting universe given theism is not much, much less than 1. And therefore, in my conclusion, I'm going to say that given the likelihood principle, that the probability of our life-permitting universe is greater given theism than it is given naturalism, that acts as evidence for theism without requiring you to confirm theism or give absolute proof of theism. So essentially what I'm saying is that given the fine-tuning evidence, that is to say, the fact that the various constants that govern our physical world according to the standard model of particle physics and the initial conditions that created our universe, given that they are unlikely, it is much more likely that God exists than naturalism. So that doesn't require you to say that, hey, I'm now going from an atheist to a theist. It just means that the fine-tuning evidence or fine-tuning facts act as evidence in favor of theism. And what I also really want to give special care to is just the modal claims. And I mean this in like in a very philosophical sense. So to talk about modal epistemology very, very briefly, if you were to look at the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
Wait. If you keep going, we're not going to be able to answer to everything you said.
Yeah, let's start with where you stopped. Let's take that one thing. Go ahead, Armin.
Sure.
No, okay. So first of all, you claim that it's unlikely. We don't know that it's unlikely. It might have been the only way. If you actually knew exactly how everything happened to be, maybe if we had full knowledge of everything, we would be like, no, it's not unlikely, it's the only way things could be. So you're saying that it's unlikely, it's a claim. We don't know that. Just because probability and possibility is a human-centric perspective. Because of our complete lack of understanding of how everything works, we assign probabilities to things. But if we had full knowledge, then we would see the possibility of everything would be either 100% or 0%. So when you say it's unlikely, you're talking about it from a human-centric perspective. Also, even from our perspective, if you call this unlikely, you have to understand that anything else that was like unlikely is not something very special. Like, oh, it's unlikely, therefore it cannot be natural. Well, if it was anything else, that would also be unlikely. Unlikely is only special, again, from your human-centric mindset. Whatever other characteristics the universe had, those specific characteristics will also be very unlikely among all the other things that it could be, right? So there's that. Also, I don't understand, even if we can't understand ourselves, if we can't explain how these special characteristics came to be, for you to say, like, this is so special, so we need an explanation. Okay, yeah, sure, we need an explanation. But the God, you say, like, oh, if we had God, it would explain all of this. It wouldn't, because the God hypothesis is not explaining anything. It doesn't have any extra explanatory power. You're just saying, I could add anything else in there. I could add any random. You're adding God. I could just add any other random explanation without any evidence. I'm like, okay, here, mine has explanatory power as well. But because you are not describing how God came to be and how God is the creator, and you don't have many. I don't know if you do, like, if you want to define God to us, because all the mysteries about how the universe has all these characteristics, once you start getting into the details of God, there's more mysteries there, and how God came to be the way it is, and how it is supposed to be the creator. So your explanation has more mysteries in it than all the characteristics that make the fine-tuning argument. So not only you're not explaining how this all became fine-tuned, you move the explanation to something with more mystery than the thing that you're trying to explain. So it's not solving our problem. Yeah, maybe you could stop at, like, okay, I don't know how this looks so fine-tuned, and like, okay, do you have an explanation? You give us something that we can't explain either. So it's not doing anything. It's not doing any work. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've listed like quite a few different really, really good objections to the fine-tuning argument. I think what I want to do is focus at least on one of the very first things you mentioned, and that's just, how do you know it's possible? Maybe there's a deeper explanation, right? Maybe we'll come up with some new physics. Maybe we'll discover that somehow that these constants, or maybe these initial conditions, were actually necessary. And what I want to do first is just clarify that we need to interpret these in terms of modal epistemology. That is to say, in what sense is our universe necessary or possible? So first, I think if you look at the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy's article on modal epistemology, you'll find that they state that something is possible if it is consistent with some mode. So in this case, I'm saying that absolutely claiming that the initial conditions and the fine-tuned constants of our universe is standard model of particle physics are, I'm claiming that the initial conditions are consistent with the laws of physics as far as we know. And I'm also claiming that the universe potentially being in different ways with regard to the initial conditions is consistent with the laws of physics as far as we know. How does that sound?
We don't know any.
As far as the claim.
No, we don't know any of these things yet. The initial conditions,
we don't know that different initial conditions would not be consistent with the laws of physics insofar as we know.
And yeah,
let me jump in here. The universe is one thing. Let's talk about Earth, the planet we live on. Do you, first of all, you're a theist. Do you believe in the biblical narrative of God creating the heavens and the earth?
In a very broad sense, that I believe that God is the cause behind the universe, the ultimate cause behind the universe.
Okay, define God.
I'm not necessarily committed to the specific, biblical narrative of Genesis in a literal interpretation.
What about you? Do you define God? Do you see it as an intelligent designer?
I see God as an entity that exists in a metaphysical mode that is able to exist. And first of all, God is not physical inherently. God exists and is all powerful, as to say he can actualize anything.
It's not physical, but it's not physical, but it's a he. Explain that to me.
I mean, you can call it it. I mean, I just arbitrarily have used a pronoun here.
Yeah, it sounds like you've arbitrarily created a God too.
Oh, how so?
You're defining a God that. Where do you get this definition of God? You just came up with it in your own mind? You believe it's. Define God again and tell me how you came up with that definition.
So I think I can come up with a definition from something like the Kalam cosmological argument. God is a metaphysical entity that is all powerful, and let's just say.
What is a metaphysical entity? What is a metaphysical entity?
So a metaphysical entity is an entity that is not physical, but it exists in the philosophical mode of metaphysics, which is a mode, if you look at the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, that exists over the physical world, at least in a hypothetical sense.
Does this God rule over? Does this God rule over his creation? Is he involved on a daily basis with his creation, i.e., you and me?
I do not claim that here.
Okay, so what good is this God?
I think God is metaphysically cool. I just think that I love talking
what is he doing? What is God doing today? What's he doing? Huh?
I don't know, but if you give me his number, I'll call him and find out.
Oh, that's cute. So you just think God is cool, this God that you've created in your mind, this metaphysical entity that have no evidence to support, just an idea of what you want this God to be. I'm asking you, what difference does it make in the lives that we live every day on humanity on this earth?
You're asking me in a practical sense of what interest to the average person should the fine-tuning argument be of interest?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
What does it matter? In fact, how do you see this earth as being fine-tuned, for instance? Because I don't see the evidence of that on the planet that we live in. I don't see evidence of fine-tuning. Pardon?
Right. So, I claim that that there are several different constants that govern the laws of physics, that is to say, the standard model of particle physics, insofar as we know. If some of them were slightly different, then you would get a universe that just collapses upon itself in the first couple of moments of the Big Bang. Or you would get a universe in which you only have hydrogen and helium soup. So you can look at...
Okay, you're using word salad again. I'm asking you to show me how this earth that we live on is finely tuned. I don't see it. You've got 2/3 of the planet covered with salt water, and you've got most of the animal kingdom needing to drink fresh water to survive. Tell me how that makes sense. And you've got vast portions of the planet who don't have access to good fresh water. So where's the fine-tuning there?
Question.
Pardon?
Those are great questions, but I don't claim that the Earth is fine-tuned. As I mentioned in premise two,
what's fine-tuned then?
The universe is fine-tuned.
Wait, what's fine? Who gives a fuck if the universe is fine-tuned If the earth that we live on, human beings, the only planet that we're aware of that has life on it, if that planet's not fine-tuned, why are you going to jump out and say, well, I don't know about the earth being fine-tuned, but the universe sure is? What the hell?
Well, there's a very specific justification I have for that, and that is that the earth cannot be fine-tuned unless the universe itself is fine-tuned. So
but
even
the universe,
claim,
you're saying the universe is fine-tuned, but the earth isn't. Help me out here.
that is totally possible. It is possible for the universe to be fine-tuned, designed for life.
But what difference does it make, Joshua? Why get caught up in all these metaphysical arguments when the life that we're aware of on this planet that we know of is very difficult for most of humanity? So where is this metaphysical God in that, and what difference does he make?
I think like for the first part of your question, I don't have an answer to that. Can I be honest in that way? I don't have an answer.
That's the best thing you've said all day.
Question.
That's the most honest thing you've said. I don't know. That's the most honest thing most of us can say when we're dealing with the creation of the universe and gods and planets and how we got here. The most honest thing most of us can say is, I don't know. But we're here now, and let's deal with that. And my point is, I see no evidence of a God of any kind, a physical being, a metaphysical entity, anything having anything to do with humans on this planet. And that's really all I care about. Other than that, it's just a bunch of psychobabble to me.
Oh, interesting. So you're not interested in like philosophical, metaphysical claims, which are required to actually
absolutely fucking not. No, I'll leave that to you guys who want to toss words around, because I don't care. I care about the life that I live now, the people around me and how they're living. And I care about the claims that there's a God involved with the lives of these people when I see no evidence of such. Now, you guys can argue about metaphysical physics and all that stuff. I don't really care. I'm just being honest with you.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate your candor. I mean, I think I've approached this conversation with the same level of candor, or at least I tried to. Right?
Yeah. I'm just asking you, we have to deal with life as we know it, not as we wish it to be, not as we think it is, not as we claim to have some idea about a metaphysical God that's not personal or involved. To me, a God of that sort is useless. And to me, it's a waste of time and energy to rattle around a bunch of words about that God if that God's not involved with the creation that we claim it or he is involved in. And when you talk about fine-tuning and leave human creation out of that, it's, to me, a clanging cymbal, as the Bible says. What's the point of that conversation?
I think that's a very interesting perspective you have on the practicality of these theistic claims. And to that end, I would say that it is impossible for someone to believe in a God that's like, for example, let's say like the God of Islam or the God of Christianity. It is impossible for someone to believe in that kind of God being active in their everyday life without also believing the metaphysical claims about said God. And that's, generally speaking, why I tend to focus so much on all this metaphysical psychobabble, right?
But you don't believe in that personal God, and you don't care about his involvement with his creation.
Sorry, what was that again?
You don't believe in that personal God, and you don't care about his or its involvement with his creation. You just want to talk about the fine-tuning of the universe and metaphysical claims to support such. I don't find any value in that for the humans that are milling around on this earth today.
Well, I believe you, but what I'm saying is, suppose I did provide an argument like for some kind of God that was actively involved in the everyday affairs of humankind, right?
Then show me evidence.
And you could just suppose like I did give you an argument for that, right?
Okay.
Well, if that's the case, then you would automatically be able to have another argument against the metaphysics that's required to believe that kind of world. Like, you're not going to get Christianity without metaphysics.
Can I
Those are the
jump
philosophical
in?
foundations of Christianity.
Okay,
Oh, sorry, what was that?
Joshua. To me, it sounds like all you're doing is explaining, saying the same old appeal to ignorance, saying that we don't know how we got these numbers, these constants, therefore God. Like, this is just a fancy way of doing an appeal to ignorance. But just so I see where you're coming from, do you think that the multiverse theory, there's a chance that it could be a good explanation for that it could be true that we have multiverse? Is that possible? Like, I'm not saying if it's true or not. Is that a possibility that we have billions of millions, an infinite number of universes? Do you think that's a possibility at all? Are you there with us, Joshua? Joshua, hello.
We didn't lose him, did we?
Hey, can you hear me?
I'm seeing.
Yeah, there we are.
Yes, Joshua.
Oh, okay,
Did
yeah.
you hear what I?
Yes. Could you repeat that one more time? What you had said before? I think it was about the multiverse.
Yes. Is there a non-zero chance that we have infinite number of universes?
A non-zero chance that we have an infinite number of universes. I think the multiverse is a valid possibility. Although I do want to be careful in terms of how I say it is a non-zero possibility. Yes, distributing. Yes, I will say that. Yes.
If that's a possibility, wouldn't that be a better explanation for fine-tuning than your God hypothesis that just all of a sudden brings consciousness out of nowhere to the reason why we have anything? The multiverse theory. If we have infinite numbers of universes, then we will have universes with specifically our characteristics for sure, because there's infinite numbers of them.
So I would say that. I think I may have somewhat misunderstood what you had said before. I will say that if you give that the probability, first of all, gets very complicated once you're trying to involve an infinite number of entities. So
it doesn't get. It will make it possible for us to. We shouldn't even get surprised anymore at all. Like you would expect to see universes like us. You would expect to see many universes like us if we have infinite numbers of universes. I'm not saying this is the answer. I'm just saying it's a better answer. I don't even know if this is the answer. I just think like it's so much more likely than you just adding consciousness at the beginning of everything with no reason. Is your God is self-aware, conscious? Like what is your understanding? What is the definition of God for you? How do you define God?
Yeah, I mean, I think that God is a conscious entity. Although, if I also address what you mentioned as well, I didn't claim that that the multiverse is a bad explanation. I just claimed that given the likelihood principle, given all the things I said about the fine-tuning argument, that's evidence for theism. It is also evidence for the multiverse or the anthropic principle. It is also evidence for deeper physics to explain away the fine-tuning. I'm not denying any of that. I'm just saying that given the fine-tuning evidence, we have more evidence for theism.
No. Okay, so there are many explanations that you could give for something that you're witnessing, and some of them are good and some of them are crappy. Okay, so if you see a magician pull a rabbit out of the hat, okay, if the magician was actually doing magic, would that explain how he did that? Yes, that would explain it. Is that a good explanation? No, right? So you are giving us it's true. You are giving us an explanation that if it was true, it will explain what we're saying. It would explain all the constants that we have within the fabric of the universe for some reason. It is an explanation, but it's a bad explanation because it raises more questions than answers. Like, it doesn't answer anything. It would just move the mystery from one place to a worse place. Well, like, we have some mystery, like, oh, we don't know these things. And then you're introducing an answer. They're like, okay, it got worse. Now we know less things. We have more questions. When your answer raises more questions than the questions that it's supposed to answer, that is the definition of a bad explanation.
Joshua, let me ask you. You said that you believe, Joshua, you said you believe that God is a conscious entity, and you also said earlier that you believe he's all-powerful. How do you then account for his indifference toward human suffering?
Well, the fine-tuning argument actually can even work. It's essentially indifferent towards like the moral status of God. So it's an argument for just a general theistic God, and maybe that's impractical from your.
This God is not moral. This God is not moral. This God is not moral. He's conscious and he's powerful, but he's not moral.
That's not a claim I'm making. I'm making the claim that he is conscious, that he is all powerful. By making the claim that I don't make any kind of moral claims about the moral attitudes of this entity.
Okay, so God doesn't care. So God created us and we're suffering and he's all powerful, but he doesn't have the capacity to care that we're suffering.
That's not the argument that I'm making.
Okay, but do you think he doesn't care? He's all powerful and he's conscious of our suffering. He's aware of it, but he's not doing anything about it. So why do you think that is?
I don't have a clue here. I don't think I have a good answer for or explanation.
Well, I don't think I would be defending that God if I were you, or trying to convince people that a God like that exists, because that's a really bad God.
Okay.
Wouldn't you say? If I was conscious of people suffering and I had the ability to do something about it, and I didn't do something about it, that would call into question what kind of a person or a God that I am. Wouldn't you agree?
Not necessarily. I think that assumes a certain kind of model about morality that I may or may not agree with.
If you saw a child being attacked by someone in a park, and you knew that you could tell that they had nefarious plans for that child, and you had the ability to intervene, and you didn't, you're saying you're not sure that that's a moral issue that you would have a stance on?
I'm saying that I'm proposing an argument for fine-tuning or from fine-tuning.
You're dodging the question. You're dodging the question. Joshua. Joshua.
Yes.
Joshua.
Yeah, David.
I asked you a specific question about a girl in a park, and you're dodging it, going back to the fine-tuning thing. I just simply asked you, if you had the ability to do something about that and didn't, what would that say about you as a human being right now talking on this show?
Under what moral model?
Okay, you're dodging it. Do you have a moral idea? Do you have an idea about what's moral or not moral in that scenario? You're saying it might not be moral to intervene?
No, I'm saying I'm not making any claims about morality here.
Okay, you're dodging the question. What would you do, Joshua, in that scenario? Simple answer to a simple question.
Sure. I mean, I can tell you what I would do. I would.
Okay, tell me.
If possible, save them.
Tell me.
Yeah, I would save the person.
Okay, thank you. That's all I was looking for. Now, you're trying to present an argument for a God who may or may not do the same thing. Correct?
Yes, I'm proposing an argument that is agnostic with regard to the moral status of God.
So you're more moral than this God that you're defending?
No, that doesn't follow from what I argued. I told you what I would do. And I also told you that I'm arguing for a God without regard to the morality of this entity. It just doesn't comment on the morality of this entity.
So you don't think this entity would have a moral conscience? It would be conscious,
that's not what
moral.
I'm saying. I'm saying my argument is agnostic with regard to the moral status of this entity. It doesn't propose any particular model of morality.
Okay, even if you're agnostic, it will lead to a conclusion that this God would be evil based on the things that you said. This God is powerful, it's conscious, it's aware, it could stop evil, and it's not. It doesn't matter if you're agnostic. The conclusion is that this God would be evil because you're basically defending an evil God. That's what Dave was trying to say. It doesn't matter if you get to that conclusion. The conclusion will be given all the premises that you're putting there. That would lead to us coming to the right conclusion that this God is evil. Do you see that?
At no point did I assert a specific model for morality whatsoever.
Yeah.
Although I did tell you
Matter-
what I would do in that
Doesn't
situation.
matter
I didn't,
what you're asserting. Doesn't matter what you're asserting. Given all the things that you believe, the conclusion will follow. Without your assertion, it will assert itself. It will assert itself. You're saying this God is conscious. It can intervene. There is evil. It's not intervening. So this God is evil. We don't need your assertion.
I
It just
never-
automatically.
I never claimed that there was evil in this case. Although although I did say, like, if I saw that I subjectively perceived there to be.
Do you think children do you think children dying horrible deaths from cancer, like, do you think that's evil? Do you consider that to be evil? Do you think that's bad?
Sure. I mean, I think it's bad. I think it's a tragedy.
Okay.
Like,
so you
actually had someone from cancer.
So now you assert there is evil. So there is evil. Now you asserted it. You have a conscious God that can intervene, and now you have asserted that there's evil. So this God is not intervening. So without your assertion, we come to the conclusion that your God is evil. Yes?
I just said, hey, that's something that I just don't like. I would never want to. I don't want to see that happen. There are tragedies that happen all the time. Like it doesn't take a lot of effort to find them.
You are a better person than the God you're defending.
Well, under like what model? Under what moral, I guess, like perspective is that true?
Under anyone that makes any sense.
Yeah. I think you know, Joshua, you know in your heart what's good and evil. You just won't admit that this God that you want to present to us has any sense of good or evil because you don't want to hold it accountable. And that's you don't get a free pass on that, because a God has to have attributes for it to make any sense at all. And if this metaphysical entity has no attributes, has no moral code, has no sense of right or wrong, then it's a worthless, just a psychobabble, worthless concept of a God. And what's the point of that? I don't understand why you are so adamant about creating this God, or making sure that you believe in this kind of a God, and yet when it comes down to the actual actions or attributes of this God, you don't have anything, and you don't want to ascribe anything to him, because you know if you do, he's going to be found wanting, and you don't want to admit that.
Well, actually, the reason why I don't want to, overcommit myself in my arguments is because the plausibility of any argument just becomes reduced the more premises you add, or the more propositions you tack onto it. So I think it is in my philosophical interest to make a minimal, to really minimize the breadth.
Well, then you have no argument at all. You're proposing something that, first of all, that this God created everything to begin with, the fine-tuning argument, and you've got nothing to defend it with. You've got nothing to present as evidence of that. And so you're making it as vague and nebulous as possible so that you don't get backed into a corner. That's kind of cowardly, actually.
And you already gave this God human characteristics. You already gave this God human characteristics, so that already opens the door. Even if you try to make it as minimalist as possible so that you can't be cornered, you've already done that. You already accepted that there's evil in the world. You already accepted that this God is aware. You already accepted that this God could intervene. So even if you try not to add morality to it, it already comes in without you needing to actually say it. It already automatically comes with all of that. This already becomes so difficult to defend as soon as you come up with any human characteristics to whatever cause the universe you think has. Anyways, but we need to go on because we've already talked a lot. So So let's move on.
Thank you for your call, Joshua. Good to talk to you.
Yeah. Thank you for the call. But I need to. Here's another super chat. Why are the super chats so lovely today? Saying love to Armin and especially to Dave. You are awesome. Oh, thank you. This is giving me a lot of energy. Yeah.
Armin, you're eating us up, aren't you?
I am. It's a lot of positive energy. Not when I say positive energy, I don't mean it in a woo way. Okay. Okay. So Okay, so I need to tell you that we now have a channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form. Visit tiny.cc/AEN podcast. There you can listen to all the latest shows from the Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, the nonprofits, and others on one channel. And okay, so guys, I need more theists calling. Let me see if we have any theists. God, why are the Muslims not calling? Muslims, dear Muslims, I am here. I am an ex-Muslim. You could humiliate me in front of a large audience. There's 1,000 people watching, and there are more people going to watch later. So call in and defend your religion and show how anybody who used to be a Muslim like me and left Islam is because they had no clue. They didn't even know the ABCs of Islam, and that's why they left it. Nobody who truly understands Islam will leave Islam. So come and show that to everybody, right? So there's that. Okay, so let me see. So we have some good calls here. Let's maybe talk to Judy from California. So Judy has an unusual story about how she became an atheist. She wants to also ask us about a seemingly supernatural experience. Judy, can you hear us?
Guys, for having me on. Armin, if they do not invite you back, I will write an actual letter. I will put pen to paper, and I'm old. I can write cursive, and I'll put it in an actual envelope and put on a stamp and send it in saying, you get Armin on. Ha.
Oh, my God.
Thank you, Judy.
Hi, Dave. I have... I became an atheist in a way that I've never heard anybody say before. And it's kind of funny to me now that I'm old and I look back, you look back on a life and you see things from, I think, a higher perspective. Anyway, when I was 5, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, just such a horrible, gray, restricting, cultish religion. And they gave me, when I was 5, they made the mistake of telling me about the flood. And, of course we believed in God, but my family believed in the Old Testament God. Fear me, worship me, obey me. And I always loved animals. And unfortunately, I had a good imagination. And I imagined the rain coming down, because it took 40 days and 40 nights it rained. And it would have had to have rained very, very hard to cover the whole earth. So we've got this pounding rain happening day and night. So people wouldn't have just dropped dead. Animals wouldn't have just dropped dead. They would have gradually run out of food. They would have all tried to get to higher ground. Houses would have been collapsing, sliding down. It would be in mud. They'd get to higher ground, and some people would be washed away, their husband, wives, everybody struggling. Animals doing the same thing, trying to climb trees, slowly dying horribly. And I thought, what a fucker. Oh, I'm sorry. What a poopy head that God is. I hate him. And I will wait till because the witnesses believe that you stand before God and get judged, right? You don't go live in heaven unless you're one of this special group, but you live on the earth. But God judges you. And I thought, I hate that guy. I hate him. And I will not live in a world ruled by him or it. Because I did picture him as a big, evil-looking man. I will not live in a world with him, but I will pretend until I get there. And I'm not going to tell anybody how I feel, because maybe I can fool God. Maybe if I say my prayers in front of my mother, maybe if I act good, he'll let me stand in front of him. And as my last act, I will spit in his friggin' eye and say, I hate you for what you did. And then when I actually got older, and I have no education that's formal, but I've read a lot, when I realized that there was no place for God, like Laplace said supposedly to Napoleon, I see no need for this, and as you study more, you realize there is no need for a God, and no explanation for God, no place for a God. I thought, I was so disappointed because I had this picture of being able, I knew I'd get smited, or whatever you say, But I had this picture. I'd go out having spit on him, and he'd be shocked because, who else is going to plan for that their whole lives? So I just wanted to tell that story because I never heard of anyone who became an atheist and was disappointed because they wouldn't get to have that final showdown with God. Anyway, I have an experience that happened to me that I have no explanation for, and I thought maybe you guys could listen to it and help me out with it, and I'll tell you quick. In the 1980s, I was newly married, and we took a class, the several-day class in meditation. And I read about the class, and it was meant to help you in all the ways that meditation helps. It helps you stay well, it reduces stress, helps you sleep, helps you stay healthy and get over headaches and tension and things like that. A lot helps you maybe be more creative, helps you in many ways. And I thought that's a very good thing. So we went to this class, and it did all of those things. It taught us how to meditate, how to go, and gave you some triggers so that you could go to a relaxed state relatively quickly. So it was very, very productive. However, something came up that I didn't know was going to be there. On the very last day, they told each of us, bring in 3 names, 3 cases of somebody who has a physical ailment. And you will get in pairs, and we did this, and you give, and now the guy that was working with me would give 3 names of somebody, and you tell their name and age and generally where they are in the world. So he said, for example, there's a woman, she's 45, and she lives in, Burlingame, somewhere. And then they taught us, you go to what they call go to level, meaning you relax. You get a picture of this person, and you can see stuff. And I could see that I just didn't know what it meant. I could see that this woman had something in her arms. And they don't show you a picture. They don't show you any medical, anything. They don't tell you anything more than it's a woman, she's 45. And I could see something was in her arms. The bones looked weird. And then after you do that, and they told us that you get to have, little by little, you understand what you're seeing. But I could just see something was wrong with her arms. Turned out she had arthritis in her arms. He said there's a guy, he's 28, and he's sick, and we don't know what it is. He just doesn't feel good. Well, this was in 1980, and that was the very beginning of the AIDS crisis, but if you didn't pay attention to it, and no one knew at that time, it was like the very beginning, 2019, of COVID. They're just getting people with the flu. They had young men, generally, that were getting sick of mysterious shit. And I didn't pay attention to it. But I looked at this guy, and I couldn't see, and I all of a sudden could see his blood, and I said, he's got AIDS. And I didn't know that word even. I guess I might have heard it in the background on the news, but I didn't know what the symptoms were, and I didn't know what symptoms this guy had. The guy who was giving me the name of the 28-year-old said, no, it's not AIDS. It's not that. We don't know what he has. But we took the class again, and I saw that guy, and the 28-year-old had died of AIDS. Now, since that time, I had many experiences like that where someone's, having troubles with something. I can go to level, and I can see that. What's amazing to me is that everybody else in the class could do it. My husband could do it. My sister could do it. My sister's boyfriend, who at that time was a very rich, older guy who was very conservative and did not believe in anything supernatural, said he could do it. He said, I don't care to do it because I don't care what's wrong with people. But he could do it. And so I don't know what that is.
So wait, so you're saying you can detect people's illnesses? You have that power now?
Or not necessarily the illness. I can see stuff, and it's not just me, but I can see stuff in a body, stuff in that area. Like the bones in that lady's arm looked to me like they were deteriorate, like they were lacy or something, like there were holes in them. And that's
What
not
do you
how
think?
arthritis
What do you
looks.
think, Judy? What do you think it is? I mean, you've
What
sat
do
with
I
this-
think? What
Yeah.
I thought was that, in fact, there are ways that we can pick things up from people, because the person who sits across from you is right next to you, and they give you this information, so they know that person. And I thought, well, maybe there is some way that we can pick up thoughts, because thoughts are electrochemical energy, and electricity is heat. Maybe that heat, and we do radiate heat from our bodies, around our skin. Maybe maybe you can pick it up from there. I don't know.
Problem. Okay, Judy, the problem is that what you've experienced, like everything that you've experienced, has not been observed in a controlled environment with like A/B testing, like having a controlled. It's not repeatable. So here's the thing: our brain is very good at seeing things that are not there, coming up with patterns that don't exist, seeing correlations where there's no correlations, highlighting things that seem significant, but other things that would also show that we don't have this ability, or something is not significant, but also reduce the emphasis on it in our mind. So our mind plays a lot of tricks on us, right? But if what you're saying was true, there are a lot of people out there that are paid money to go figure these things out, and they use methods that has been very effective in figuring these things out. So, for example, if such a thing exists, I would assume like they would have seen it by now. If people have that ability, there are a lot of people that would be very interested in doing that is true. And we would have had scientific studies that showed like, oh yeah, we had like people in a controlled environment under observation, and we give them these tests, and we completely isolated every other explanation that could be, and then they will actually see that there's something happening here. But it seems pretty obvious to me that there's something else that is happening here, or you're imagining something. Like that is a more likely explanation than you noticing something that all the scientists in the world from all these countries have not been able to demonstrate that is reality. Like which one is more likely? You are imagining something that you think is true, but it's not, or you have figured out something that all the scientists in the world have missed. Which one do you think is more likely?
That's precisely why I called you. I think it's fantastically unlikely that I personally, Judy, would have thought something up that's like Copernicus or Einstein. I think that is so unlikely as to be impossible, that there is not just a non-zero chance, there's no chance. And yet it happens, and it happens to me when for example, I'll see somebody will say, so-and-so they've diagnosed colon cancer. And I will see something in their body that's not the colon. And I think, well, he's got colon cancer. That's clear. And I'll see a good colon, and I'll see a black spot somewhere else, and not be able to reconcile that. And then it will turn out that they did not have colon cancer, but in fact had some appendicitis or something. I've done that again and again. And so I just don't understand it. But I agree with you that it is unlikely to the point of being impossible. I just wondered how it might work.
Well, you may not get the answer to that, but to Armin's point, either you have supernatural abilities, or you are picking up innuendos, or you're picking up some hints from people or something, or you're just lucky guessing. You may have heard of this challenge that the famous atheist and magician James Randi had for years.
Yes.
The $1 Million Challenge, where he had it out there for years. Anybody who claims to be a mind reader or spoon bender or anyone with any supernatural claim, he would pay them $1 million if they could prove that was legitimate. And no one ever collected that $1 million. So
I heard about his claim probably just about 5 years ago. And
so that's the point. It's more probable that you're just picking up some hints from people, some innuendos, some patterns, some lucky guesses, some whatever, because either that or you have supernatural abilities. It's either one or the other.
Well, I would not. I just feel that it couldn't be supernatural. It would be natural. It would simply be, like I was suggesting, something along the lines of people do have some degree of, what would you call it, where they extrude thought, not extrude, but,
I mean, that's possible. You can transmit
and we can pick it up.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine it's I don't think it's supernatural. That doesn't make sense to me at all.
Right.
Anyway,
Judy, I think
to thank you.
I think the best solution to the situations like this is not to have an answer, right? I think getting comfortable with I don't know is sometimes the best solution here. Like we were like, oh, what is, like, our mind feels very uneasy when we can't explain something, but we can train our minds to be okay with not knowing. Sometimes the answer is like, I don't know what's happening here, and that is the best answer.
And it sounds like you're kind of there, Judy. You're kind of going like, I don't know what this is. It could be this. You're not making a claim that you think you know what it is. Yeah.
When I hear Neil deGrasse Tyson and Brian Greene and some of these other people that are geniuses say all the time, we don't know. And they're not a bit ashamed to say it. I'm very comfortable. There's so much that I don't know that I have to get comfortable with that or I'd go crazy. But before I let you go, or you let me go, I wanted to thank you, Armin, for something you said that that means a great deal to me because I haven't heard anyone else say it. You called concubines in the Bible sex slaves, and that is just what they were.
Yeah,
and
I know.
I think when we talk about slavery, we talk about, it's generally, I don't know, discussed in a term that makes me think we're thinking of men generally as slaves, which would make sense because if you were buying a slave, you'd want a powerful person. But if you had a woman who was a slave, she not only would work around the house, and she was subject to the wife also. The wife could smack and beat that woman as much as she wanted. That woman was a slave with the addition that she had to have sex whenever the guy wanted her to. And that's a sex slave. And the Bible says nothing about concubines. I don't even know if there's any penalty for the man smacking them around, and they die within 3 days. At least the slaves, you couldn't. Which, by the way, seems worse to me. They didn't die in 3 days. That means you did something like break their leg or something, and they didn't die, but they're suffering. And then after 3 days, you send them back to work because you can. That's just, the whole thing is just horrifying to me. But the women, to me, are not mentioned enough. Slaves.
It's a horrible book and a horrible
men,
religion.
The men would be sex slaves, too, in that situation if the man, why wouldn't they have had gay people there? Mm-hmm. And if you had a slave, that was, I know in Roman times and in Greek times, they could screw their slaves. And that was not considered a bad thing. Anyway, thank you guys so much for the work.
Listen, I know you, Judy, I know you had to sit on hold for a long time. I know you were on hold for a long time. Thank you for hanging in there, and thank you for calling.
Yes, thank you, Judy.
Thank you guys for the work.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought. Okay, yeah. Thank Judy. If you can still hear us, thank you so much. And sorry for doing that prematurely. But yeah, and Judy was right. There are sex slaves. Female sex slaves were often beaten by the wives because a lot of times the men preferred having sex with their sex slaves rather than their wives, and that used to make the wives beat the sex slaves. So that was quite unfortunate. All right, so I need to tell you guys, if you happen to be in Austin area next Sunday, August 27, 2023, then please join us for the live broadcast of Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience. Talk Heathen will be hosted by Forrest Valkai, Jamie the Blind Limey, and J Mike. The Atheist Experience will be hosted by Johnny P. Angel, Forrest Valkai, and J Mike. Doors open at noon, and we hope to see you there. We have super chats from Adam. Okay, I'm not even going to try. By Adam. Adam is saying, Adam is saying, Armin, you and Dave are doing a great job. Oh, what is the full title and author of the book behind you with science on the spine, and who and the who Bible. Okay, so these are reference books. Let me see. So this one, it's actually pretty cool. It's I don't know if I could. Wait a minute, I can't do that. I just realized that I can't do that. I was explaining the rules that I can't promote these things. Okay, never mind. I can't answer that question. Sorry. So good thing I remember that. Sid. So, okay, so yeah, Sid, super chat from Sid is saying, enjoying the show. Dave is awesome. Armin is just okay. Kidding, Armin, you are becoming a favorite host of mine. Keep up the good work.
Great.
And thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you. Humanistic Judaism gave us £1 with no message. So thank you for that as well. Well, I wish you would call Humanistic Judaism. It sounds like, what is Humanistic Judaism? I want to know. Oh, by the way, I need to also mention something. Dave.
Yes.
Can you tell us about some of the work you do? Because I've heard you explain it in some of the other shows, and it's amazing the work that you're doing. So can you share that with everyone?
Yeah, just briefly. I know we're running short on time, but we've started a nonprofit this year called I Am Dying Out Loud. You can find it at iamdyingoutloud.org. We would love you guys to get involved with that if you want to volunteer, any kind of support you want to give. What that is we are advocating for the protection of people's rights in the healthcare system against overreach from religion. And that takes all forms. We've gotten all kinds of letters, and we get messages from people all the time about the ways that their healthcare experience when they're seriously ill in the hospital, when they're facing death in a hospice or something, and they are they're having religion shoved down their throats. They're having chaplains forced upon them. They're having nurses praying for them without their permission. They're having all kinds of things against their will. And so we're advocating and pushing back against the overreach of religion in the healthcare world. And we get, like I said, you can go on the website, iamdyingoutloud.org. You can see stories on the website of experiences like this. And so just we feel like there's a need, and everything we're hearing from people is showing us that there definitely is a need for this kind of pushback, essentially freedom from religion in the healthcare system. And it's the default position, the assumption that when you're in a healthcare crisis that you want God. That's not true. 25% of the country says we don't want religion, and they're not being represented. So we're here to represent you.
No, that is so great. Imagine you're living your last days or weeks or months, and somebody coming out and telling about after, like, I can't imagine anything more emotionally traumatic.
Yeah,
if you're
it's traumatizing. Yeah.
So thank you so much for doing that. So also, I know we have to go soon, so let me just quickly tell you this. If you also want to see more of me and what I do, you could go to the Atheist Republic YouTube channel. We have 2 shows, one where we cover religion-related news globally, and one where we react to bizarre Islamic videos. So search on YouTube for Atheist Republic to see more of me, if you like. All right, yeah. So, and guys, so thank you for everybody for being here. Thank you for all the super chats. Don't forget to like and comment, especially with your answers for this week's questions. Your likes and comments really help the channel grow. So it's the least you could do. Like, we spent 2 hours for you. You could simply just spend 2 seconds liking the video, and it really helps us out. So please do that. Anyways, yeah, that's it.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
All right, guys. See you on. I'll see you in 14 days, I think. Yeah. Bye.
See you, Armin.
See you.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.